Hello everyone, and welcome back to the ARPA Highlight Series. I am Cameron McLaughlin, the Equity and Engagement Coordinator in the People and Belonging Department, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. The ARPA Highlight Series is here to shine a light on the amazing programs and resources made possible through Athens-Clarke County government's allocation and distribution of ARPA funds. Our goal is to educate and inform our community about the impactful work being done, the lives being changed, and the opportunities being created thanks to this vital funding. In this episode, we will be highlighting the ARPA-funded Eviction Prevention Program by the Ark and Family Promise. You'll hear about their crucial collaboration to provide homelessness prevention services, along with the positive outcomes they've achieved for individuals and families in our community. Sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by the stories and insights we will be sharing with you. To kick things off, let's meet our guests. Can you please tell us your name and the role you play within your organization?
Lucy Hudgens. I am the Executive Director at the Ark.
And my name is Hannah Dolan, and I'm the Prevention Coordinator at Family Promise of Athens.
Thank you all for coming today. What specific metrics or indicators are being used to measure the success of the Ark and Family Promise's Eviction Prevention Program?
The program was written with a goal of assisting at least 200 households in Athens-Clarke County, so we kind of started the program with that baseline goal. At this point, we've been able to exceed that, so we are counting households as well as individuals. At this point, and we are towards the end of the program, we've been able to assist 383 households, which equals 1,070 individuals. So that was just one metric, like the actual number of households and individuals impacted.
Can you provide some key highlights of the program's impact on reducing homelessness and preventing evictions within the community?
Sure. So specifically for the Ark, we were able to provide eviction prevention services to 135 households over 8 months, which broke down to 359 individuals. In our follow-up calls after 3 months, we found that 84% remained housed, and we're still working on collecting data for the 6-month housing metric that we're measuring. We want to see how many households that we help are remained housed after 3 months and after 6 months.
How has you all's organization shared information about the program to stakeholders and community members?
There was a gap of time between the time we were awarded the grant and then we were actually contracted and able to start providing assistance to households. So in that time, both Family Promise and the Ark were reaching out to landlords that we'd already known, also trying to make connections with landlords that we had wanted to work with before but hadn't. So we had landlord outreach, and then of course we also had neighborhood outreach, so the property managers that we've worked with who are also trying to help their tenants stay housed, we were able to speak with. And then of course we made flyers that we put out the court and then in neighborhoods that we thought could benefit from this program or had in the first round of eviction prevention program.
I think we also, between Family Promise and the Ark, really worked with other nonprofits that had the same clientele who could benefit from the program. We made sure that they knew when the program start date would be, what criteria was being used, so that we could cast a wider net to ensure that we reached as many people as possible.
How has ARPA funding enabled your agencies to enhance or complement the services that you already provide in the community?
Family Promise has existed as a homeless shelter since 2004, while our primary program historically has been assisting families who are experiencing homelessness. We see that as one state that families could be in. Going further upstream into the prevention side, it only allows us to prevent families from experiencing homelessness, which would be the most cost effective, but also seems like the best option for families not having to go through that crisis and also not having to go through the trauma while facing an eviction and not knowing if you're going to be able to stay in your house is its own crisis. We believe that preventing going further upstream to homelessness has become one of the routes that we see assisting the community in a different way.
What unique strategies or interventions have the Ark and Family Promise implemented through this program to address the diverse needs of individuals and families facing eviction?
Prior to making the decision to apply for EPP funds, Family Promise and the ARC had both facilitated a different round of funds for Athens-Clarke County, specific to addressing the impact of rent increase and helping those with the rent increase remained housed. Due to the success of that program, our agency posed a similar strategy for administering the EPP program. Essentially, we wanted to work upstream with households that became 1 or 2 months behind on rent prior to receiving an eviction notice, while also expanding the services downstream to households that were already in the eviction proceedings. The ARC focused more on the pre-eviction piece, which allowed us to catch vulnerable households before an eviction was filed and allowed us to work with that household for up to 3 months. This format allowed for more individualized case management and possibly rehousing measures in that time frame. So instead of just wiping an eviction clear, we were able to catch families prior to eviction, which saved us tremendously on filing fees, and the families didn't have to go through the stress of having an eviction filed, and it allowed us to work with families for 3 months, making plans for future success. So having a strategic approach like this was really helpful to address the diverse needs that families were facing.
We primarily worked with households that had an eviction filed, so we were already having to be in contact with the court, property managers, lawyers. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in that process. For a time, we would actually go to eviction court in person, meeting with clients, doing a little bit of outreach at the courthouse. Eventually, we shifted away from that model because of the increased numbers of people reaching out. And once we brought that work and the intake back to our office, we still wanted to be accessible to people. So we had an online form that anyone could fill out if they could access internet. And if that wasn't the case, interested applicants could reach us via phone or at our office, which is right down the street from the court. I think being in close proximity to the courthouse allowed us to try to be more accessible for interested parties, whether that was landlords or tenants.
Are there any notable success stories or case studies that demonstrate the effectiveness of the Ark and Family Promises eviction prevention efforts?
One that jumped out to me was we were working with a single mother of 3 who was laid off from her job, and around the same time her rent increased by about $200. She was able to find another job, but the gap in pay led her to become behind on her rent and in jeopardy of eviction. Through the EPP program, we were able to help pay her back rent in full and work with her for 3 months to help with the cost of the rent increase overage amount. Over those 3 months, she met with our financial education director to work on a budget. We could not find anything lower rent-wise, so we worked with her budget so that she could afford her place moving forward. It did require her to get a second job, but in those 3 months, we were able to make a plan with her to ensure self-sufficiency moving forward. So this is a great example of EPP coming in and stabilizing a household and allowing us that 3 months to work individually with someone to get them onto a path of self-sustainability after we came in and helped.
We also assisted families who were in that gap of having left a job, looking for a new one, maybe already having landed a new job, but just have not put in those 2 weeks in the hole before you get your first paycheck. We also assisted many families who had experienced some kind of medical crisis, whether that was a head of the household who then had to find a new job or was off of their work for a little bit, or that was one of their children who they needed to then take care of and again take off work for. A large population of households that we assisted were also furloughed by SK Batteries. And so a lot of those households had to reach out and were all in the same boat of not having work. It was around the holidays as well. And so being able to, again, like Lucy said, stabilize families that were facing a very unexpected loss of income overall was able to help.
How has the partnership and collaboration between the Ark and Family Promise maximized the impact of the eviction prevention program?
The first day that we opened our online application for the eviction prevention program, we received 50 applications. And so as you can imagine, it's such a high need rental assistance in Athens that as a smaller organization and as a single organization, that was too much for us to process, trying to keep up with the time limit of how fast evictions can happen. And so being able to share the applications with another organization who is so established and already so familiar with a lot of the families that we work with or the situations that people could be in allowed us to focus on households that had an eviction filed, and then allowed the ARC to continue assisting households that didn't have an eviction filed but still needed assistance with their rent.
And as I mentioned, we had such a great working relationship prior to getting the EPP funds that it was super helpful to be with an agency, like Hannah said, who was familiar with what we're doing, but also could help manage the caseload, because at times it was simply overwhelming. Another great thing that we were able to do is, or we're lucky enough to be able to do, was Family Promise handling the eviction part and the ARC handling some of the pre-eviction part. Adding in that case management, really, that approach had a significant impact, and I believe that really greatly increased our chance for long-term success.
Can you all describe the typical person you serve through this program? For example, is it mostly families or single-person households?
For us specifically, I would say it's typically low-income single moms working one or two jobs, really with little income left to cover bills. Oftentimes we do get families, but predominantly it is single households with children.
I was looking back at the reports that we've been turning in monthly, and it looked like the majority of households had 3+ people living in their house. So you can assume a lot of that time is households with children.
How does the Ark and Family Promise ensure that their eviction prevention program is fair and accessible to marginalized communities within Athens-Clarke County?
So this program, one of the requirements for this program was that households had to fall within a certain income level, or they couldn't exceed a certain level of income, I should say. So that already kind of targeted a certain population in Athens-Clarke County that then we were able to respond to. We also were encouraged and really supported by community partners who reached out saying, hey, what happens if someone in our community applies? How will you handle this? And then they were able to assist us in figuring out what that would look like. For example, there's not a staff member at Family Promise who speaks Spanish. However, one of our neighborhood leaders was able to come into an intake and kind of help facilitate and translate in real time for that family. We had other community members that assisted applicants with the online portion if that was hard for them. And we had hospital social workers as well as school social workers that were advocating for their families, which really, I think, solidified the feeling that people have multiple touch points in Athens, and then when they can work together, services can be delivered in a helpful way that's most accessible to client themselves.
What lessons or insights has the Ark and Family Promise gained from implementing the eviction prevention program? And how do you plan to apply these learnings in future initiatives?
Specifically for the ARC, because we have been providing financial assistance for 35 years, we felt like we were in a great position to deliver what was asked of us. And we also knew that the need would be high, but it was so much larger than we could have ever anticipated. And so some lessons that we took away from that is it's okay to press pause if things feel like they're overwhelming. You have to really be ready for the long haul. And we found that adding case management really was the key to long-term success. Not just simply paying something off for someone, but really being invested in them over time is going to yield great results. It was an honor being able to run this program. I think we did it very well. I would do it again because we have learned so much, but really being on the ground with the neighbors that were struggling and suffering was hard to be a part of. But it made us feel so good to be able to respond and keep people housed.
Family Promise has existed historically as a homeless shelter. However, in the past years have been expanding its prevention services and its capacity, this being by far the largest amount of money that we've been able to spend directly for rental assistance. I think, similar to Lucy, the need we always knew was great, but actually having, data to show how many families and individuals are looking for rental assistance at a given time was very eye-opening. Another big takeaway that we had was that while there are some commonalities between the families and the households that we are assisting, we have just seen how the increased price of rent has affected people of all backgrounds. I think that was also very eye-opening as we were meeting with families who had multiple people in their family working jobs, or they might have had 0 people at that time receiving income. However, this increase in rent and the position that renters are in out a lot of power to move, the increased cost of moving as well, just kind of made us realize that this work is really important and we would want to continue working on the prevention side because we've seen the impact that it can have for families short term, and then with our outreach at 3 and 6 months long term as well.
Looking ahead, what are the Ark and Family Promise's goals and aspirations for sustaining the impact of their eviction prevention efforts beyond the duration of ARPA funding?
For the Ark, our goal is to continue to be the primary agency that does rent and utility assistance. As Hannah mentioned, rent increases are continuing month by month. So it's rare that I have a household that pays under $700 in rent. And with our relationships with landlords, we do hear and know that more rent increases are coming. So doing the EPP program has really put a fire under us to make sure that we are offering as much support to these households as possible, because ultimately what's going to happen is families are going to be evicted and not have a lot of options to choose from in Clarke County. So we just plan on using the data that we collected, using the experiences that we've learned, and get to work fundraising and raising funds so that we can continue to offer these type services.
Yeah, along the same lines, I think that coming to the end of the program and looking back over the data, but then also just conversations that we've had with families, realizing that we have numbers to put to what we've just, always described as the need is so large. So hopefully this will make us better advocates, but then also just to better understand when we have families who are come to our day center, regardless if they're behind in their rent or if they're experiencing homelessness at that moment, we can have a better context for understanding where they're coming from, and then be able to hopefully find services that could meet them where they're at.
You all mentioned collaboration. You mentioned the need. What recommendations do you have for other organizations who are interested in applying for government funding in the future?
Specifically collaborating with other agencies?
Yes.
Oh, 100%. I think it's a great idea. Because when EPP, the RFP for EPP came out, I think it was just the Ark and Family Promise who were interested, but didn't feel like we could take on that huge amount on our shoulders. And after working with Family Promise previously through COVID and some other things, we knew that we could do the work really well together. So it just made sense for us to sit down and write sort of what we thought how we could be most effective, how Family Promise could be most effective, and then put it together, and we were really effective and did great work. So I would highly recommend collaborating with other groups to expand the service that you want to provide, because I bet it will be just as effective as if you did it by yourself.
Speaking from the organization that had less experience than our partner organization, the Ark, if you feel like you're in a place where you really want to take on something big, then I would recommend looking for a partner that has a lot of experience in that. I know that the Ark really assisted us because they have 35 years of experience. And so coming into this, having, their policies and their procedures, and then getting to figure out how that can work out for our side of the program assisted us greatly. And they honestly were able to lead us through some harder decisions, which led to how it's gone, which is great.
Thank you all again for sitting down with me and having this conversation. Before we close, are there any last words that you have? Maybe our listeners can get in contact with you?
Sure. So you can get in touch with me, Hannah, at prevention@familypromiseathens.org. Our office is actually in First Baptist Church, and so we have our own entrance and kind of our own hallway that we're open Monday through Friday. I think that a big theme of doing this work has just been, it is called prevention. It is the preventative side of seeing households experience homelessness. However, with some of the larger forces at play, the increased cost of rent specifically, it can feel a little bit discouraging. It can feel like a zero-sum game. And so if you're in that position working right now, I would just want to say there are other organizations who feel that way. So I know that talking with other people who have been doing this work has been really helpful. We also just have a city that is not catering towards people being able to afford rent. And so if you are a landlord or you are a property manager, I would just encourage you, if you're curious about any of this work, or if you benefited from this program, participated in it, received money, if you want to reach out and learn how the work that we're doing, some of the work that ARC's doing, there are several other fantastic organizations in Athens that are working to keep Athens housed, because we know that when people are housed, when children are able to continue to go to the same school, when people are working the same jobs over time, that's going to uplift everybody. And so I just can't emphasize enough how much we need landowners and property owners especially to hopefully see this vision and want to join in on the work, because we can't do this work without that cooperation.
Any last words? How to get in contact with you?
Oh, yes. So you can reach me, Lucy, at the ARC Monday through Friday. We're at 640 Barber Street. You can walk in, say hello. You can reach out via phone or email. That's listed on our website. And Hannah said it perfectly, but I'll echo on that this is a need that will be ongoing, and I'm a little fearful for some of the things that our neighbors will face in the future if this kind of funding isn't readily available. So we will be working to try to gather up as much funds to continue this work. So if that's something that you're interested in helping with or donating to, or just want to speak to individuals who are going through that, we would welcome that at any time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the ARPA Highlight Series. We hope you've gained insight into the valuable work the Ark and Family Promise does in our community, learned about the Eviction Prevention Program, explored the comprehensive services they provide, and met the dedicated people behind these impactful efforts. A special thanks to Lucy and Hannah, the Ark and Family Promise teams, for their hard work and commitment to preventing homelessness and improving our community. Be sure to tune into future episodes as we continue to highlight the transformative projects and resources benefiting Athens-Clarke County. Until next time, take care and stay informed.